ESPN has finally released their final top 300 players, and Alabama players are down at the Senior Bowl. Who's performing well?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, HSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein. That's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I'll tell you about FanDuel in just a little bit. Thank you, everydayers, for being here every day, and thank you, newbies, for being here today. Jimmy, ESPN has released their final ESPN 300. Seems a little late right here at the very beginning of February, but I say beginning of February into January. But I did like what they did. They had a good write-up about it. And let me go ahead and tell you a few of the guys and let you know what's going on here. They have Keelan Russell moving up to number 2 just behind Bryce Underwood. I'll explain that here in just a second. Yeah, Keelan moved up for everybody. Dijon Lee moves up to number 11.
Mustard.
A.K. Deer at number 38. Ivan Taylor at number 45.
We don't talk about him enough.
We don't, and I think that's a great spot for him to be. Daryl Johnson, number 48. Justin Hill at number 58. This is a guy that I think is just universally underranked.
Underrated.
And
he has absolute wow tape. When you watch his tape, if your reaction isn't wow, I don't know what tape would be.
Then here's one of my problems with them. They have Mike Carroll at 70 and Jackson Lloyd at 97.
Oof. Mike Carroll.
I think both of them are low, but I think Mike Carroll is dang near. I thought the Justin Hill ranking, I can justify the Justin Hill ranking because everybody sort of has him in that number.
Yeah.
The Mike Carroll number, I mean, it seems like they just don't appear to like him very much as compared to everybody else.
I can tell you from the highest, there is an expectation at the highest level that Mike Carroll may be starting at Alabama this spring and this fall, and not because there aren't other options. Let's remember, Jaden Roberts obviously going to be one of the starting guards. The other guard spot is open. And Cam Dewberry and Geno Vandermark have significant experience playing in big-time college football games. And Mike Carroll is still thought to be a serious contender to take a job from those guys. So yeah. I think I'm fine. If I read one that said Mike Carroll is a top 10 prospect, period, I think that's more accurate than 76 myself.
Yeah, number 70, but still, your point remains. And Jackson Lloyd, 97. Chuck McDonald at 100. I think that's about where a lot of people have him, so I'm cool with that.
I like him, but, he doesn't have wow traits. Dijon's huge. Michael Carroll's a wow thing. Justin Hill's tape is wow. Chuck McDonald is more like Xavier Brown.
I agree.
He's not big. He's not fast. He's not nut. What he is ice cold. He's ice cold like Xavier, Yeah, he just doesn't make mistakes, doesn't get out-athleted. He's just more of a technician. They're never going to rank you high.
Lotsier Brooks at 101. Again, I still think that's underrated, but I think everybody's been so slow to pick up on him that that's the best we could hope for. So I'm not going to complain about that. Here's one where I'm going to say maybe overrated. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm going underrated for all the Bama guys. Here's one. Mika DeBose, they got him at 118. I mean,
I agree.
That's probably a little high considering the way the reports we got at some of the All-Star games.
Yeah, I consider Micah. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a term that turns people off, but they need to understand what it means. And that Micah's a bit of a project. And by that, I mean, you're going to have to get his body right before he's ready to play big-time SEC football. And that's going to take a while. But that's fine because you bet on guys like him. Look, it'd be great if you just went out and signed 5 Mike Carrolls, but it's impossible. No one's ever done it in the history of college football. So don't expect Alabama to start doing it now. No one's ever done that. You got to sign guys with upside, and some of those guys do take a while in the incubator. So I'm with you, Luke. That's a good call. I think Micah should be, just off the top of my head, somewhere around the 200 range, which, by the way, I consider a compliment, because I think any player that's ranked in the top 250 to 300 is a blue chip prospect.
All right, then you have to go to Abdul Sanders at number 175. I can buy that. I mean, I'd probably.
That's fine.
I mean, I hate to say I'd have him so much higher when I can't really super justify it. I don't know. Now I do like this. They got Marshall Pritchett at number 210.
That's cool where he's rated, and that's fine. And he could even be rated lower than that, and that would be fine. But he's a dude to watch. I think that's a kid that's been sort of universally under-regarded, because I like Bone, who said this first, so I'm going to give Bone credit every time. Bone says, he's Miller Forrestall. And I think as Alabama fans, we don't remember how critical Miller Forrestall was, how good he was, how helpful he was for 4 full years on the field playing with the ones. I think Marshall Pritchett can be like that. And guys like that are just critical to having a good offense.
Then they also have, I'm going to skip one just for a second, Caleb Edwards at 237. So 2 Bama tight ends in the top 237. Very nice. Now, they've got Derek Meadows at 215. I'm going to tell you why that is probably about where he should be. We've seen some people have him borderline 5-star. But I think if you're ESPN or if you're anybody else and you have him close to this 215 number, you're going based on actual production. Versus you know what it is to me? I got a text this morning from somebody who was looking at NBA drafts, and he said, "Man, I just saw they have LeBaron Filan going in like the first 20 picks, and they don't have Janai Broome going until the second round." And I said, "Yeah, because the NBA is looking at it like Janai. We've seen everything Janai Broome has to offer. We know exactly what he is, and he's not as a college player. He's fantastic. As an NBA, he can play, but I don't know if he's going to be a star. LeBaron Filan is this box of wonder. I mean, you might open it up and everything may just blossom and bloom. That may not work out, obviously, but we have not seen his ceiling. They feel like they've probably seen. Janai Broome's been in college for 4 or 5 years. They've seen what he can do, and Filan hadn't gotten close. So that's where I look at Derek Meadows. Like if somebody wants to say, "Oh man, look at the measurables," they got him listed at 6'7", 205.
Good Lord.
Now, I don't know if that's right. I know he's very tall. Do I think he's probably 6'7"? He might be 6'6". I don't know. Yeah. But 6'7", 205, also, by the way, is very skinny. For reference, I wouldn't consider myself chunky, but I would say that I'm maybe a little pudgy at 52, 6'5", 250.
This is different for everybody, but I was noticing this about Senior Bowl heights. Luke, how do you feel about if I told you, like, for instance, Jalen Milroe, good example. Jalen Milroe was 6'1" and 4/10, meaning 4/10 of an inch above 6'1". If I was saying, would you consider Jalen Milroe at that size to be 6'1" or 6'2", what would your answer be?
6'1". I'm rounding down.
I say 6'2".
I'm rounding down.
Well, the way there's obviously
6'2" does sound a lot taller than 6'1". I know it's only 1 inch. It sounds a lot taller.
It does sound a lot taller, but the way I look at it is if you're over 6'1", then you're 6'2". That's the way I look at it.
Okay.
But because if you're saying he's 6'1", are you now including him with the people who are 6'9"? Because that wouldn't exactly.
No, 6'9" is 6'2". Right. Now, we're going to talk about Milroe when we talk some more Senior Bowl stuff in a second, but I did want to. ESPN their recruiting coverage is pretty blah usually, but they had a good write-up this time. I encourage people to go check it out on the site. I'm not going to go through.
Who wrote it? Do you remember?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who wrote it? Did
Craig Hubbard and Tom Luganville.
Yeah. Those, see, at On3, we only count ESPN as 10%. Because just the industry thinking as ESPN's rankings isn't as good as others. But I don't know the amount of work they put in. I'm sure it's a lot, but I like Craig Hobart and Luganville. I mean, to me, they're smart guys that know recruiting. But maybe, hey, if their entire recruiting department might just be those two guys, then you can't take. It's just too big of a job. It's
a big job. Now they break down. So they take each position and take the top two guys in each position, say why one guy was over the other. Bryce Underwood's number one in the country and Keelan Russell's number two. And they say why Underwood ranks number one. Underwood has a physical tools and upside with high ceiling. Russell might be more ready to play right away, but Underwood has a lot of clay to mold. Again, okay, fair enough. But I think you're picking nits because there's one is number one in the country, one is number two in the country. I'm fine with my guy. Now they also have 1 versus 2 running backs, Harlem Berry against AK Deer. And they say that while AK Deer a little bit bigger, Berry is one of the fastest players in the class. And usually for running backs, that gives you the nod. I'm fine with that too.
Sure.
By the way, they had DeCarian Moore, who was a a wide receiver for Keelan Russell, and Jamie French, who was at one time committed to Alabama, as 1 versus 2 in the wide receivers. They had Elias Williams and Ethan Barber, both tight ends, headed to Georgia as 1 and 2.
Well, the Brock Bowers has created a Pied Piper, a tight end pipeline to Georgia. But did Jamie French, he signed with Texas?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Now I'm going to scoot down to the next one for Alabama. They had number 1 linebacker, Zayden Walker, who went to Georgia, versus number 2, Darrell Johnson, who went to Alabama. And it said why Walker ranks above him. Both are sideline-to-sideline factors who can develop into 3-down defenders. Walker's elite burst and slightly better versatility lands him at the top. Okay, again, very fair. And then they have number 1 versus 2.
That's a high ranking for Duke. For Duke Johnson. I mean, so I got no problem with it just because
I got no problem.
Considering him in the top 2 is hugely significant.
They got Naheem Alford versus Dijon Lee, the 1 versus 2 cornerbacks. Now, they have Alford being ranked number 1, and they think Alford ranks number 1 because of pure cover skills. By the way, the 3-star sleeper that they have 1 3-star sleeper in each one of these categories, was Mason Dunn, who Alabama made a push for late, I know. But, the thing that, first of all, after seeing Naheem Alford in the playoffs in the Alabama playoffs and seeing him get burned a couple of times there, and then seeing him in the All-Star game, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know that I don't like Dijon Lee better. I love Naheem Alford, but Dijon Lee is a monster. He is a 6'4" corner. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I would bet on Alford. I mean, as being as going to be great based on the tape I saw in high school. But I agree with Luke 100% that his performance in the state championship game and in the all-star type settings, it's a stretch to consider him the number 1 cornerback in all of football.
Going to talk a little FanDuel right now. We are running a little bit behind, so sorry about that. But Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook, baby. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or betting on the coin toss, whatever you want to do, you can do it on FanDuel. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl. That's like icing on the cake, bruh. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of 50 Bowl. Super Bowl 59. 50 Bowl? What the heck's wrong with me? A couple of new offers I saw out there, Jimmy, for Alabama. They've moved out into Kalen DeBoer country in the Dakotas.
Yeah.
And decided to go after a few dudes.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota, they offered a tight end up there. What stood out to me was in the kid's offer, he said, blessed to get an offer from Braxton Barker from Alabama. And again, this is just the new rules. That your analysts, your support staff people can be just as involved as anybody else. They're just not allowed to recruit off campus. Braxton, that means you can recruit on campus from your phone. And Yeah, that was just it just stood out to me because Braxton, I think, is one of our more well-known support staff guys because that's Jay Barker's son and Sarah Ashley Barker's brother. So it just kind of stood out to me about the offer. But hey, this is the time of year when we need to keep in mind that not every offer is committable. Not every offer is we will take you tomorrow. You're establishing a pecking order. You're basically telling kids we're serious about you. You know, we like you. We want a relationship with you. We want you to come to camp and let us work with you and coach you. And we want to get serious about you. Not every offer means please, 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 please commit to us. Please, please. Some offers do, but that would be an example of one where I don't know that kid could commit to us tomorrow. But it is interesting that we'd recruit someone from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That is not a normal Bama stomping ground.
Y'all know I love my dating analogies with this. This is, you're on the second date and she says something like, man, I've never been to the Bahamas. And you're like, yeah, but my uncle's got a place down in the Bahamas. She goes, that's awesome. He goes, yeah, maybe we'll go someday. That's what this offer is. This is not, I'm taking you to the Bahamas.
I don't recommend any woman on a second date leaving the country with someone, by the way. That's how it's like a serial killers festival. Hey, we had a good time at Applebee's. Let's go to a secluded island.
My uncle has a storage facility in the Bahamas. Would you like to go visit it? It's a dimly lit storage facility with mini tools and saws.
Yeah.
Some plastic wrap. Also,
white van?
Watch this Dexter DVD while we're traveling. But okay, so Senior Bowl going on. You've been down to the Senior Bowl, and I know you've been keeping up with it pretty closely.
Yep.
And it's been kind of funny. A couple of folks on Twitter, a couple of national guys have been saying, man, the ball really comes out of Jalen Milroe's hand, something crazy. And I really love the potential. And there are also people going, he missed like 10 receivers in a row. And I was like, that's Jalen Milroe. Both things are Jalen Milroe. And so I'm wondering if people are like, yeah, what Alabama fans have been saying is right. He is both awesome and dumbfounding at times.
Yeah, several things. Watch Jalen quite a bit. First of all the reports about him playing poorly or fair, based on it wasn't great at all. I do think one report I read in particular was over the top critical to the point that it was an exaggeration. Wasn't that bad. But he didn't perform well. Couple things. Day one of a practice with players you've never practiced with before, the expectations aren't high, even from the scouts, in terms of how many balls you're going to complete and that sort of stuff. They're not really looking at that. Secondly, when they say Milroe didn't complete a lot of balls, that leaves out the context of that makes it sound like the other quarterbacks did, and they didn't. I would say that Jalen Milroe struggled and didn't perform well and was about the same as Jackson Dart, who also came in almost a slam dunk QB3 in this draft to me. And I wouldn't say that Milroe was any worse than Dart or Riley Leonard or Seth Henniger, the other quarterbacks that are on Milroe's team. They were all about the same. Milroe's better physically than all of them. The ball does fly out of his hand better, I think, than the others in terms of just rote arm strength. But it wasn't effective. Jalen Milroe was not effective day one. So let's just call it not a good day for Jalen. But at the same time, remember context. And also remember that a same guy reminded everybody at the Senior Bowl yesterday of, Milroe didn't look good on day one. Here's two guys who also didn't look good on day one just 1 year ago. Bo Nix and Michael Penix also had rough day ones. They both went in the top 12 of the draft and had outstanding rookie seasons.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And look, he's going to give you some of that up and down stuff. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. That's what he's done every year at Alabama.
I'm sticking with, regardless of what happened yesterday, I'm sticking with what I've always said about Milroe going all the way back to this last spring and early summer. I think he'll be a day 2 pick.
All right. Another thing that came out, apparently his hands aren't as big as they'd like for them to be. I don't know.
You know, I'm not really into it. Let me tell a good story. I don't do story time much, but this is good. This comes from an Alabama, former Alabama offensive coordinator. A story he told me. He said when he was coaching another place, not Alabama, his quarterback that he was working with had the biggest hands of any quarterback he'd ever coached. High school, college, pro. He had never coached a dude that had the size of these hands, and that guy fumbled everything. He said he fumbled. He said, I punished, I'm sure this was a joke. He said, I punished him for fumbling by telling me he had to carry a football to class, and he dropped it somewhere between math and English. So this guy fumbled all the time, huge hands. Eventually, they had to bench him because he kept turning over the ball. And he's like, by total coincidence, the next guy up had the smallest hands. I went from major extreme to major smallest hands. He said, first few nights, I couldn't sleep at night because I was worried he was going to fumble everything. He's like, I don't ever remember the guy ever fumbling in practice or in the
Maybe
game.
he was just disturbed by his small, carny hands.
Exactly. But anyway, his point was, he said, I stopped caring about hand size when the biggest handed guy I've ever had couldn't hold on the ball, and my smallest handed guy I ever had never fumbled. He said, so I stopped caring. Now, to say that, most do care.
Bama, Mississippi State tonight. Are you surprised to know that Mississippi State's a 1-point favorite?
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised.
I've been bragging on Mississippi State here for a while. They're one of I think they're really good.
They're good. And now they have lost to Kentucky at home. It was a close game, but they lost to Kentucky at home. I kind of like Alabama in this spot tonight. I'm not going to go, say Alabama's going to blow them out or anything, but I think that this may be a game where the Sears drama may help Alabama, and playing on the road may help Alabama instead of playing at home again. And the first time Mark Sears misses a shot, everybody goes, bench him again. Maybe Sears just comes out just hair on fire. That's the hope. I mean, obviously it's hard to just say that's going to happen. I just feel like that's the hope. And if you have a lot of faith in Mark Sears, and I do, I feel like that's the kind of way he's going to play tonight. Mississippi State's tough. I mean, they're the number 14 team in the country, but they did struggle with South Carolina to a degree. And I feel like Alabama has played very well on the road this year. They're undefeated on the road in the SEC. They've played in some hostile environments already in Rupp Arena and at Texas A&M. So they know what that's all about. They played at South Carolina very early on, back when they were still sort of fighting for NCAA recognition. So, look, I like Alabama's spot here. It's locked on Bama, but I kind of like Bama's spot. I feel like this is a good place to get everything back on track. A few things of note: the Bulldogs are 8-1 on their home court, so that's certainly something to be. And it's always tough to go over there and win in Starkville. I mean, we've done it before. Did we do it last year? Let me see if I can pull that up real quickly. We did. We beat them in Knoxville last year. I mean, in Knoxville. That'd be interesting. We beat them in Starkville last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a very good team. I think Alabama fans that haven't seen Mississippi State yet will be surprised by how long and athletic that team is. They're very, very good defensively. And Josh Hubbard, in my opinion, should be a lottery pick, if not a definite first-round pick. I like Alabama to win, though. I like Alabama. I think Alabama's going to play really well coming off the Mark Sears benching. I think Mark's going to play well. I think the team's going to play well. Little bit of a low-scoring game tonight, but I like Alabama to win. But Mississippi State makes me nervous. Again, I think they're a top 5 team in the SEC, which is saying a lot this year.
Yeah, I'm going to say top 6 because, I think you got the big 4, Bama, Auburn, Florida, Kentucky. Put Tennessee in there, although Tennessee now has dropped 2 in a row. They went to Auburn and they lost.
Maybe right, maybe 6 behind those 5. But That's nice company.
Tennessee did beat up on Mississippi State pretty good.
They did, and boy, about Kentucky beating Tennessee in Knoxville last night
with missing a couple of dudes.
Yeah, Kentucky's a good team. I got to give a lot of credit to Mark Pope. I thought Kentucky might. I don't. Struggle's not the right word, but I didn't think Kentucky would be this good.
I agree. I agree. And now, by the way, I just looked it back. We've won the last 2 trips to start. So
nice. Nate's good.
And then we lost the one prior to that 2-game win streak by 2 points.
This is the best Mississippi State team though that Nate Oates has faced.
But I mean, is this the best Alabama team they've faced? I don't know. The Brandon Miller team was really good. Brandon Miller team obviously had the best player.
Yeah,
but I think this team's probably better.
I'll go ahead and say, not based on preseason expectations, based on what's happened on the floor this season, this is Nate Oates' best team. Let's remember 2 years. The team 2 years ago was very, very good, being the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, despite their upset loss in the Sweet 16. But this is Nate's best team.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And look, it'll just that opinion will only be solidified if they go in there and win tonight. I think they will.
If you don't
can't say it's definitive.
If you don't win, but you beat Georgia Saturday, you finish the first half of the SEC season at 7-2, on track for 14-4 in the toughest league in all of college basketball. It's not the end of the world by any means.
I do. When you say on track for 14-4, mathematically, yes. But the backside of the schedule, Missouri ranked, Kentucky ranked, Auburn twice ranked number 1, by the way, Florida,
yikes,
Tennessee, and Mississippi State, and I'm missing somebody.
It is absolutely brutal and terrible and So my advice to Alabama is to win the game.
You are a sage man, Jimmy Stein.
No, it is going to be a tough. This is a tough road game. Auburn plays at LSU tonight, and I won't be surprised if Auburn struggles.
No, I don't think Auburn loses. I'm with you. I think they could struggle. I mean, what you're seeing with Auburn right now is somebody nationally put it very well. I don't think Auburn's necessarily dropping off. I think a lot of other people are catching up. Auburn's experience, cumulative experience, helped them a ton at the beginning of the season. But now these other teams have their own experience just from within the season. So I think that they're getting the chemistry and gelling a little more. So I feel like other teams are catching up. It's not that Auburn's dropping off. They're still a great team. They're number 1 for a reason, and I would vote them number 1. I hate saying it. Don't get me wrong. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I agree with it.
That's great. And again, my hope is at the end of this year that we're saying, boy, Auburn owned January and February, and Alabama owned March. That's what I hope we're saying.
A little bit of April.
Oh, yeah, Tad. Yeah. First part of April will be big.
All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.